Hey.
Hey guys, welcome to Herding Little Cows to the Glory of God. I'm Sarah. This is Mark.
I don't know why I make weird faces when we turn the camera on. You do it before.
I have popcorn in the teeth, so that's my problem right here. So sorry about anything there. I'm Sarah. He's Mark.
That's right.
We've got 8 kids at home. Youngest being this little guy. He's so cute.
He's 3 months old now.
And oldest at home is 17. We also have a 21-year-old and a 28-year-old that are out of the house.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, so this video today, go ahead.
I was just going to say that we got a really cute video from our oldest daughter, Virginia, and little baby Justice, who's like 3 weeks old.
He smiles.
And he wakes up smiling. He's so adorable. Sorry,
so
carrying on. We were talking about something?
We were going to talk today about marriage.
Yes.
Because something that I was just recently thinking about, and I had seen someone post something on Instagram that made me start thinking about it, and then I've been thinking about it for a couple days, and then I mentioned it to Mark yesterday. I guess yesterday, a couple days ago.
We were talking last night anyway.
And just the idea that as a married couple, every interaction we're having during the day is influencing how our children will view marriage and possibly have an impact on their future marriage. Well, it will have an impact on their future marriage. So are we giving them good things to copy?
I just realized my back was hurting a lot turning that way.
Good things to copy?
I'll sit this way.
Okay, good things to... Are we modeling good for them or are we modeling bad? And when we are all sinners and we will fail, but when we fail, how do our children see our interactions? Do they see the reconciliation? Or do they see like, oh, we just pretend it never happened? Or do they see us just stay grumpy at each other? Are we willing to work hard to make marriage work? Because marriage is hard work. Any relationship is hard work. I mean, you may have that best friend that you rarely fight with or anything, but even then there's going to be times that you disagree and things like that. So how do you fix the relationship when it is broken? Because we are sinners and we either are going to sin against the other person or there's just going to be miscommunication. It happens.
Yeah.
Okay, so that was a long intro to this video.
Well, especially in our marriage, because I have some problems thinking straight. And sometimes words come out of my mouth and I'm not even sure where they came from. So there is a lot of miscommunication. But I think the thrust of what we were talking about was, what are we showing our kids? What are we teaching our children about marriage? What are we teaching them about how we speak to one another? What are we modeling for our children about how we deal with conflict, how we resolve conflict, how we work together? Biblically, the husband is the head of the family, but what does that look like? It's not a tyrannical, dictatorial, I'm in charge around here and everybody, I'm man, it's not that, but it is, there's authority and therefore there comes responsibility. And so part of the responsibility the Bible gives to men is to dwell with your wife in an understanding way. Is understanding that God has made men a certain way and he's made women a certain way. That's not an excuse for sin. That's recognizing that we are different. And because we're different, and God has put us together and said, I want you to be together. I want you to be one family. I want you to be one flesh. I want you to raise children together. I want you to do day-to-day life and financial decisions and all of those things together. How do we do all that? And like, one, how should we do it? And then two, how do we do it? Do we do it well?
First I'm going to say, I was just giggling a minute ago in the video, not at what you were saying, but I hear the kids in there. One of them is sounding like a bird. The kids are behind us. They're in the house having a snack, and then they're going to go with Big Sister out the other door and be playing outside. So you're going to hear, this is real life. This is how we do videos. Yep. They were ready to sit down for snack, and then they'll be out here. We can like supervise while we do the video. But anyway, so doing life together, do we do it well? Do we do it? I would say that we have a good marriage. I would say, there's a bug in my face.
I would say, talking to a lot of people, we have an excellent marriage in that we've been doing this for a long time and learned a lot. And people come to us and say, you seem like you have a good marriage, so maybe you could help us out.
But most days, there is some misunderstanding or some issue that goes on.
Oh, certainly.
To say we have a good, excellent marriage, I think we do. But I don't
perfect.
want it to come across on the camera that we never fight. The door's going to slam. that we never fight, that we never have issues, because
We
that's not
disagree
true.
on things.
If you live in a house with somebody, whether you're married to them or not, you're going to just come across the, why did you leave this item here? Why didn't you do this way? Why are we doing this? Like, those things just happen just because we are human and we don't understand someone. So we ask a question, and then that all gets messed up in. We've had a couple times over the past couple days. We've had a couple times over the past couple days where one of us has said something and the other one immediately is feeling defensive. And the first person who said it wasn't meaning it in a bad way.
Right.
There are times that we can speak to each other poorly and like, well, why would you do it that way? But the question of, why did you leave the sausage out? Could be asked in a very, like, I'm sure there's a logical explanation what's going on.
Exactly.
And
Why is this here?
right.
Why'd you do that?
But we can say it rudely, or we can say it kindly. But sometimes even when it's said kindly, the person then gets defensive about it too. So
Yeah, it
and I
doesn't.
can't even think of one of the situations or which one was offended. So
Well, it doesn't keep you away from the conflict in general. It doesn't mean that, like, I've said multiple times before that a couple things that I keep in mind, try to keep in mind, don't do so perfectly, but try to keep in mind, is that my wife is my best friend. My wife is the suitable helper God has given me to make our family and our marriage work well, and that he will be glorified in it. This is not an enemy. Now, if your spouse acts like an enemy, that's a lot harder, but you still don't have to treat them like an enemy, because Jesus says to love even your enemies. So even if someone was
keep burning coals on their head.
coming at you as an enemy, you don't have to respond as an enemy. You know, when we've done a lot of ministry on the streets, and when someone comes at me and they're upset about something that I didn't even say, and they're yelling and screaming and hopping, you know, I mean, this happens in street ministry, especially in abortion clinic
Happens
ministry.
on YouTube comments too.
Happens on YouTube comments too. But people are, you know, they didn't hear what you said. They're making assumptions. They're unreasonable and they're upset. But when someone's literally standing in your face, and funny enough, we have video of this for some reason, where I was preaching the gospel and a man walked up on the street and started yelling and cursing at me and saying all sorts of things and, you know, getting right up in my face. And my response could have been to flatten the guy. It could have been to yell at the guy. It could have been all sorts of things. I mean, my background is I was a bouncer and a bodyguard. I'm a very large person, and I can handle myself, we'll just say. But my response doesn't have to be, I need to defend myself, or I need to be, you know, jump to conclusions about this. The way that I dealt with it, and this is God's grace, and this is what we're saying. We're not saying do this on your own. We're saying this is God's grace and the Holy Spirit working in us to make us more like Christ. That when he came up and yelled at me and said those things, I put my hands behind my back and I just kept talking to him, and I tried to share the gospel with him, and I tried to diffuse the situation and de-escalate it. And some people will still be angry, but like the way you handle conflict has a lot to do with it. We can get angry, we can get defensive, or we can just say, okay, my wife has brought something to me. She doesn't just jump on me about little things. So maybe she has a point. Maybe I need to humbly listen and understand it. And the same way, this isn't like, you know, she gets to run everything and I'm wrong all the time. Sometimes she's wrong.
Right.
You know, we both have to look at it and say, this is a person that loves me, that cares about me, that's trying to build our marriage. So even if what they're saying may be wrong, we may disagree on it. How do we handle ourselves when those things happen? Do we use unkind words? Do we raise our voice? Do we get physically, you know, our blood pressure go up and all this kind of stuff? You get that vein sticking up the side of your head. Those are not things that I see Jesus doing, even though at times Jesus was angry about sin. And I don't think, especially when it's helpful for a man, because I can only think like a man. I can respond like I know women, but I can respond. I can tell you as a man, I think our blood pressure is easily elevated. I think we naturally tend to feel when someone disagrees with us, we tend to say, I'm being disrespected and somebody needs to respect me.
And as a woman, it's very easy to cry.
A little tiny bit. There we go.
As a woman, it's very easy to cry. And maybe some women do that out of manipulation. I've heard people say that, but I've never cried out of manipulation. I cry because that is my first response. I think a guy's first response is to the blood pressure raises, they stand up taller and remember I'm king of the castle type thing. I'm talking about generalization of men. This is not Mark. I'm trying to talk generalization men, generalization women. I think they try to remind people I'm in charge. Is that a fair assumption?
Totally.
And I think
it's
for
establishing
women,
dominance. I mean,
women tend to cower. I don't know if that's the right word. Tend to step back and try to diffuse a situation. And this isn't true for all across the board, but I think men are the protector and like physically stronger. Like that's how God's made them, and that's a good thing. That's why God's made them protector and all of those things. And I think women tend to be more the heart of the home and the relationship people. And oh no, the relationship doesn't, I guess that's what I was trying to say. The relationship is struggling right now. This is making me cry. Not I'm afraid of the man, but I'm afraid the relationship is hurt here.
right.
That's more what I meant. It was how I was saying it. It sounded bad, but that's not what I meant.
It's funny because I know you so well that I didn't think whatever it was you were thinking.
I just don't want. I know there's this push at hyper-patriarchy, and I don't even know all the terms right now, and I just know that there's a lot of people that are on either side of we don't want to have effeminate men and all of that stuff, but there's also I'm a strong domineering man and I'm going to like hold my thumb over you, and I didn't want people to think that that's what I was talking about, because that is wrong also. A man shouldn't have to walk around saying I am man, hear me roar.
And if you do, you're probably not.
But women, I think, realize, oh no, there's something wrong with the relationship, and their first thought is to cry and how do we fix, like, they're not their first thought, the first thing that happens is they cry and they're thinking, how do I fix this relationship? Where for a man it's more, how do I make sure that, like,
men tend to look at fixing problems. How do I fix this problem? You're thinking fix the relationship to make sure the relationship is intact, even if the situation isn't fixed, to make sure that we maintain the relationship. And my response as a man is primarily saying, okay, so what do we need to do to fix this? And sometimes what we need to do to fix it is to listen to each other. And I've been called a weak man by some. I don't know what on earth would possess people to say stuff like that, but I think there is hyper-patriarchy, and I think there's effeminate men, and I think there can be dominating women, and there can be people who are outside of the place that God has designed us to be. And I think that we can develop bad habits, and sometimes so I want to kind of try to get back to what I think we were trying to talk about, but I'm not sure.
Yes.
Is that many times our responses to conflict are very much tainted by what we were taught when we were young. Like you've talked before about if your parents had any sort of disagreement about anything, you would cry and think they were going to get divorced, and like the relationship must be over because they're not talking nicely to each other.
And a lot of my friends were from divorced families.
Yep.
But my parents never, like, looking back now, I should have had no reason to think my parents were going to divorce.
Right.
I think it was just divorce was such a big thing when I was a kid. Not that it's not a big thing now. I just, when I was a kid, there were a lot of my friends whose families were split. And my mom is very easy to cry, just like I am. And so, in my mind...
And that's in every situation, by the way. Happy, sad, upset.
We just cried everything.
It is a response, and it's not a bad response. But I was thinking about, so there are people who are raised in abusive situations where their parents are physically, verbally, emotionally, in every other sense of the term, not very kind to each other or to their children, and you grow up living in defensive mode. I know one person that I'm thinking of, that he's a national speaker and author, and he's spoken very much about this, being raised in a home that was very combative, very conflicted, very abusive, and how that can very well show us, and I think we all come from sinful backgrounds.
Yeah.
I think biblically, we all come from sinful backgrounds. We all have sinful parents. Some are worse in different ways, but we are sinful people. We are not perfect. We have been forgiven of our sin and made more and more like Christ, be conformed to his image. As Christians, we are indwelt by the Holy Spirit, and ultimately we will be fully and finally like Christ when we are with him. But we are not there yet. And so we do have to overcome our own past. I have to overcome, because I was married before. Most people that watch the channel know that I was married when I was 19 and divorced at 21. And that was a bad relationship in very many ways. There's a lot of bad things that happened, but I can't blame those things on her because she didn't do them. I can look at my own fault in those things, and I can say, okay, this is where I was at fault and I need to change in this way. But ultimately we need to look to the perfect example of Christ to see how does Christ love the church. He laid down his life for his bride that he loves.
I hear someone upset inside.
You want to go? Yeah. We're going to take a pause.
Okay. So we had a little one who woke up from nap a little bit ago, but he hasn't quite acclimated to the real world yet. So anyway, what he was saying about learning from, like, what we've learned from our past and the things we have to get rid of. So in my family, I was saying my parents didn't really fight all that often. And when they fought, they were never, like, I never saw it as like big fights. I would see someone would get upset and my mom would cry. But I don't remember my parents ever being mad at each other for any extended period of time. Nobody ever like slept on the couch. Like, I never saw the reconciliation process though.
Right.
Which, not that you'll see it every time. I just, as a child and like now as an adult looking back, I don't remember ever seeing my parents say they were sorry to each other. Right. But I think they did. I just think it was behind closed doors. But my parents had from the outside, my parents had a very good relationship. Like everyone would have said my parents had a very good relationship. My dad passed away 10 years ago, so that's why I'm not talking about their relationship in present day.
And we've talked to people in many churches who you have an unbelieving spouse, you come from abusive households, but some people come from very good, solid households. Anyhow, the point being, what children see from their parents in their marriage colors how they think about marriage. And so how careful do we need to be exemplifying the gospel, because we come to God confessing our sin in repentance, and we're forgiven and we're restored, and that relationship is renewed. Do we model that for our children? Do we quickly forgive one another and love one another? Are we willing to be offended? Like, it's 1 Corinthians 6 where it talks about not taking another believer to court. Not taking Christians to court. It said, wouldn't you rather be wronged than to be judged by the world? And to some extent, we should be okay with being wronged. I'm not saying take abuse. I'm not saying make a lifestyle pattern of these things. That's not what I'm saying.
Let's just say this right here. That if you are in a circumstance where you are not safe, we are not saying to stay. We do not believe in divorce, but we do believe that there are times of separation, physically getting out of the house if that is necessary. So I don't want to even take this video to say, to think that not that we're saying it, but we're not.
No, I'm saying if somebody says like, oh, have you put on weight? Which is not a very nice thing to ask. That is a case in which you can just say, that wasn't very kind. It didn't make me feel good, but I'm not going to make a federal case about it. Being willing to forgive one another. Love covers a multitude of sins, and that has to start in a marriage. It starts between us and God ultimately, but I think it's revealed in a marriage. It can be revealed among siblings. It can be parent to child, child to parent. Last night, Naomi came to me with something that she felt she had thought wrongly about me or something, and so she apologized to me, and I said, I remember what was going on there, and I was actually wrong because you were trying to talk to me and I wasn't paying attention. I was distracted by something else. And so we were able to have a discussion about the value of each other's company, the opportunities we have to bless each other. We were able to model Christian love and acceptance, because she's my sister in Christ. She's not just my daughter, she's my sister in Christ, as is my wife. And how do we, because we will hurt one another, we will be upset with one another, sometimes rightfully, sometimes wrongfully, But are we willing to humble ourselves and say, I was wrong in this situation, would you forgive me? And knowing I don't even know how to explain it. Is it the joy of reconciliation? Like, reconciliation is a beautiful thing. It's too bad that you have to get reconciliation after, breaking something, but reconciliation is a beautiful thing, and it is, again, another picture of the gospel, of how God has forgiven us a much greater sin than we've ever committed against anybody else. How do we model that for people? Sorry, I feel like I'm distracted again.
No, and I think that part of it is, like, as a child, I don't remember watching my parents go through the reconciliation process. And I think that I'm not saying that you always need to apologize in front of the children, but I don't think that
But I
you
think
should
if you're
always
fighting in
doing
front
it.
of the children, if the children hear you arguing, you may need to.
Yeah, if the children know that something's not good, then I think that they should know that that things have been fixed. Not saying every time, okay, we have to go in front of the children and make sure this happens. But there's a lot of times that our reconciliation, the I'm sorry, happens in the kitchen. We've not on purpose, but like we've had a disagreement. We have gone our separate ways after we've talked about it. And then
Men do really well at walking away. It's not a I don't care about the relationship. It's
that's hard for women to
I'm
know.
angry right now, or I'm upset right now, and I need to think, and I need to blow up some steam. If it was two guys fighting, they'd just punch each other in the face, and then 2 minutes later, they'd be
It's
fine.
not a very Christian way to do it.
That's not how. I'm not saying that's good. I'm just saying men's brains work different than women's, and there's a natural fleshly way in which men's minds and psyches work, and then there's the Christian way, the way things should be, and those aren't always the same. Well, I don't think those are the same at all.
But as a woman, realize that your husband might need to step away from the situation when you want to continue hashing it out. I'm not saying their way is right or our way is right. I'm saying that I think women we need to continue talking about this till we're fixed. And men sometimes need to walk away for a little bit and can come back, and the relationship can be healed much quicker. But it's hard in the moment.
It is. So knowing that what may be the best thing to do is to shut your mouth and walk away, and then knowing as the recipient of that to say, I'm not, this person didn't say, I don't want to talk to you. They said, I just need some time. I need to go for a walk. I just need to go pray for a little bit. I just need to go think about some things and see. And honestly, what it should be is I go for a walk and I think about what happened. Am I at fault here in some way? Did I mistakenly convey something, or did I say something I shouldn't have said? But to think about it, to consider our ways, and come before God in repentance, and then go make reconciliation with people.
And in most circumstances, both people are at fault. I'm not saying every time, but most of the time, once we have gone apart or even just sat there and thought about our part in it, let's say, I'm going to throw him under the bus here. Let's say he started the argument.
I started it.
Because he said something really dumb. I don't know. I'm just making something up here.
Hey, honey, you look fat.
How I respond could possibly be a sinful thing.
Yes.
And so am I willing not take the blame for him, because you are not responsible for anyone else's sin.
Right.
But even if someone sins against you, you're responsible to not sin back against them.
And I think we would all teach our children that, wouldn't we?
Right.
Like you would say, no, just because your brother hit you doesn't mean you should hit him back. But then in speaking to one another, we somehow think it's okay. Well, I was responding to him and it's all his fault. Well, maybe the initial part was his fault, and maybe your response to it, like that guy walking up to me on the street, my response could have been, this is an unbelieving person who does not understand the gospel. I am out here as an ambassador of Jesus Christ. I better act like it.
Or you could have been like, this guy might have hurt someone, so I'm putting him down.
Been known
In a
to do
bad
that.
way.
In
bad
certain
way.
circumstances, I've been known to do that also.
Sometimes you have to keep someone down so everyone else can stay safe. But by the way, you said you don't know why we were taping it. just for people who haven't been out doing street ministry, a lot of times weird things happen on the street. And a lot of street ministers will videotape themselves just so that there's proof in court. Like if this guy had walked up, he easily could have punched Mark in the face. And there is a time for civil government to get involved in something. So that day, actually, we ended up having to show the video to the police officers because that guy was continuing to be a possible threat.
Not just to us, to others.
Right,
like,
to
there
others.
Were like, he walked out in the middle of the street and almost got hit by a car. And
So I just wanted people to know that if you haven't been there, you'd be like, why are these people keep videotaping themselves? Well, because it's to keep ourselves and others safe in.
Which is really funny because these days everybody has a dash cam on their car, and you're like, where did they get this weird video? This thing happened on the freeway. Why would they have that? It's like because they record everything they do in the car. In case some weird thing happens, they can show their insurance company, no, I was actually 300 feet behind this person. I wasn't tailgating them.
Right.
You know, so we do that as a culture. We record a lot of video.
So, yes, I think making sure the kids see reconciliation at least some of the time. And a lot of times our reconciliation is just, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have brought, a lot of times for me, it's, I'm sorry, I should not have brought up that other subject while we were talking about this one. Because it's very easy to think of something else that happened that's related. That I know there was a time just a couple weeks ago that something happened. One of the children had done something wrong. They were definitely wrong in what they did. And I shouldn't have used it as an opportunity to bring up a different situation that then caused argument between us. But like, there are time and place to deal with things, and there are times and place not to deal with things. Like, you know, if your spouse is about to go out to that work meeting, it's not the time to bring up, well, do you remember last week when you blah blah blah? Like, bring it up last week when it happened, or bring it up when it comes to mind at a different time, but don't bring it up to hurt the person.
And I think that's something too, that how do we deal with conflict is when we actually are offended by something, when there is conflict waiting, go deal with it. Don't pack it off till next week. Don't pile up a list and then wait till you get in an argument and haul out all the ammunition you've got. Like, if the purpose of bringing up hurts is to find reconciliation and to restore the relationship and to honor God and offer forgiveness and all of that, then don't pack it away for weeks on end and then bring it up later. You know, bring it up when it's an issue. And there, like you said, there's a time and a place. Is he okay? He is okay. I can see him. Naomi has him.
Okay. I can't see him. I was like, where is he?
He just fell on his bike. But
Someone's learning to ride a bike. And
he has training wheels, so like he was actually standing still, it looked like. He just fell over.
So, don't race. Anyway, also, I think one thing that sometimes becomes a fight that shouldn't be a fight, but I think sometimes can be, is just words that are said. And there is a time and a place to kind of step back and say, okay, that's not a hill to die on. I don't need to bring that up. But there's also a time and place that, so like Mark is my best friend. And Mark is the person I am closest with. And so if he is regularly doing or saying something that is offensive to me, I can take it as, wow, he just likes to offend me. Or I can take it as, maybe he doesn't know that that offends me, and bring it to him in a kind, loving way that, you know, every time you paint your fingernails green, it really bothers me. So could you please stop painting your...
my fingernails.
I don't want to bring out any of our actual things on here, so I'm going to make up silly things.
It's okay. It makes me laugh.
So anyway, I think that it is important to not always fight in front of your children, especially if you have very heated arguments. But I also think there is a time and place to show that arguments can be had and fixed, and the relationship can be rated.
And I'm going to take the wider definition of argument in more of a logical... Grandma's home.
Oh.
Grandma's home early. Awesome.
Actually, I don't think it's early. I think it's probably right on time.
Is it really?
Yeah.
Is it that late today?
The past couple days have just been very gray skies all
Right.
day, so you can't tell what time of day it is.
Yeah, it could be 1 o'clock, it could be 5 o'clock, I wouldn't know. So you're talking about fighting in front of the kids. Like, we have disagreements that come up like, oh, I thought we were having this, and blah, blah, blah. I can't think of one. I'm no good at making up arguments, but an argument in the sense that I say one thing, this is my position, and I'm trying to convince you of my position, and I disagree with your position kind of argument. I'm not saying yelling at each other. That's never appropriate. There is never a case in which either of us need to yell at one another. I don't know if there's ever been a case like that. Now, if I raise my voice like, hey, come here, that's yelling. She perceives a lot of things as yelling, and I perceive a lot of, anyhow, we have our perception issue, but we've figured each other out in 22 years.
That goes back to our pasts. My family did not yell. Like, we were not known as yellers. Our family's very loud. We can get very loud playing a fun game. We can get very loud singing musicals. We can be a loud family, but we are not a yelling family. No. Mark's family,
I don't know as I would, and I'm not willing to say that my family were yellers by any means. I'm saying I would say I have history in my family, extended family.
That's what I was thinking, was extended family.
Yeah, not like my mom and dad. I don't recall my mom and dad ever yelling at
No,
one
but
another.
like extended family, they were loud, not just because we're having fun with each other.
No.
And so
There's some alcoholism in my extended family.
So for him,
caused a lot of relational problems.
His level of loudness is way under their level of loudness. But for me, this level's still too loud for aggravated, irritated voice.
Yeah.
There is a stop, don't run in the street that is you can totally yell as loud as you need to make the kid not do that. I'm not saying that you never yell at your child when it comes to a safety concern.
Yes. But yelling at them when they're 5 feet away, not helpful.
Yeah.
So we just talked about that the other day. I mean, this is something that we disagree on. not disagree on, but had to talk about.
Yes.
Is it helpful to raise your voice in whatever way, change your tone of voice when speaking to someone? Can you
yell stop to go to the street? Yes.
Right. Can you say to someone, we're not going to play with that toy right now, or I told you to put that away, or I told you to put that away? Those are two different things, right? Like, we can recognize that the way we say things, the way we present correction, the way we present disagreements, we can do it in a way that still honors God and doesn't unintentionally cause people to feel fear. And I mean, because some people, if you raise your voice, literally get scared.
So
especially in a neurologically dysfunctional family, which we are. We have multiple people with multiple neurological conditions in this family. So raising your voice to somebody in this family may literally put them into a seizure, make them fall on the ground unconscious.
Totally just stop. I can't figure out what to do in this situation.
I don't know why I'm calling.
Start screaming. Mm-hmm. Like, there's different things. So anyway, we're going to do another video about children. So we're going to get back to the marriage thing.
Yeah.
We'll talk more about that in the children one.
Bob's just
But
cute.
just that idea, though, of like his level of loudness and my level of loudness are different. And that's something that isn't a sin. Like, there's no decibel level in the Bible of how loud your voice can be. No. But there definitely is I need to realize that if he raises his voice, he's not doing it just to offend me. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, he's not seeing it as raising his voice. But there might be a time for me to come along and say, when you do this, it makes me feel this way.
Yeah.
I feel this way when you do this. Uh-oh.
I'll be back.
Okay, so I'm going to keep talking. So anyway, every interaction that we have with our spouse is going to be influencing how our kids see their spouse. And so are they regularly seeing us being happy with our spouse, enjoying time with our spouse, wanting to be with our spouse? Or are they seeing that we're trying to avoid? We're trying to always disarm our spouse, you know, like making sure that we're like kind of like walking on eggshells so that we don't offend? Or are we actually like enjoying the time with them? Are we able to have a conversation with them about topics that are fun and like, can we have just a regular conversation like you'd have with your best friend about anything? But are we also able to talk about things that are a little deeper? Like, hey, I'm really seeing this child is struggling with this problem. Can we talk through this? Or I need to come to you because this thing that you're doing, we don't have a specific example, this thing you're doing is really hurting me or hurting the family or hurting the church community, whatever it is. Because as a spouse, so you can go watch our videos on like courtship and the things we've done with Virginia and everything, but we are supposed to be teaching our believing children to be starting relationships with believers. So I'm trying to talk to a believer to a believer to a believer, like that's what we're talking about. It's different when it's a believer and an unbeliever. Believers can still take like knowledge from this, but talking about a Christian couple, he is my closest brother in Christ, and I should be able to come to him with something that is a sin issue, or even something that I perceive as like, okay, I don't want to call you a sinner here, but when this thing happens, I'm seeing this Bible verse for this. And sometimes we have to agree to disagree that I was wrong in whatever it was I perceived, or vice versa. But we need to be able, like, as a church culture, I think we've come so far that we're not willing to confront sin with our closest. We'll confront it in the world, but we won't.
Well, I think that's part of the issue here is, I don't know which came first, the chicken or the egg, but there's very much in American church culture, now I know I have viewers all over the world, I would say in general, Christians, professing Christians, people that go to church, people that are members of churches, things like that, do not like to have someone ask them hard questions. Maybe it's the culture in general where we're in this post-truth era that people tend to think, that's my truth, your truth, whose truth kind of thing, and all that foolishness. The fact is, truth is truth. So I think we have become very offendable and very easily triggered. There's all kinds of cute little societal terms that have been invented here in the last 20 years. I'm mad at everybody, but if you're upset about something, or you feel that something is even being done that dishonors God in the church, are we willing to say something to the person and risk offense and risk a problem with a relationship because we are passionate enough about it? Again, there are some things we need to learn to overlook and just forgive and just get over it. But if it's a pattern of someone dishonoring God or teaching others to dishonor God in the way they do marriage and the way they do parenting, those sorts of things, to be able to say something and say, I believe this dishonors God. I'm not saying you're a bad person. What I'm saying is, I don't think you understand the biblical pattern for this. Could we please sit down and look at these scriptures together and then ask questions of one another or talk to each other and take some time to pray about these things together and separately and come together in a few weeks or something like that. Whatever works best to do that, depending on the circumstance. And to say, I want to confront an issue, but I'm not angry at the person. But because we don't do that, we pack it all in and we don't confront things. And then we wait till, like you said, a month later, now I've got a list of 5 things I'm mad at you about. And now I'm just going to unload on you with everything all at once.
And that is playing it over in my mind.
And that is very likely, one, the whole don't let the sun go down on your wrath and bring things to people. Because if your purpose is reconciliation, and to come back together in a way that honors God, that only comes when you actually have to confront the problem. We don't avoid problems. Some problems are not worth talking about and having to discern all of that. But when we do deal with them, as a culture, I think we have become uncorrectable. Whatever, that's not the right term, but we're so easily offended and so easily triggered that no one ever dares to say anything like, I disagree with this.
So I'm going to give an example just because I think that maybe people might be missing what we're trying to say. So okay. I'm going to give, I am very touchy about swear words. So I'm not going to say the swear word on here, but there's the love covers a multitude of sins. Kind of, what do we confront? What do we not confront? If your spouse is doing something, let's say they're doing a project out in the workshop and they smash their thumb with a hammer and they yell out a swear word. That doesn't necessarily need to be confronted, because that is a situation that probably is not going to happen again. They might have realized as soon as they said it, wow, I shouldn't have said that, but they don't have another time that they're going to be able to like show that they're like, next time they hit their thumb 2 years from now, maybe they won't say the swear word, but it's not like they're going to hit it again tomorrow and do that.
Well,
But if you've seen that there's a pattern that every time something goes wrong or they drop something or whatever, they use that swear word, then that would be a time to confront. I don't know if that makes sense.
No,
like
totally.
a random one of something, we can all sin. And I'm not saying you don't say, hey, maybe we shouldn't use that word, but like to make a big deal about it when they smash their thumb with a hammer.
well, and did you hear it or did the children hear it? Are we setting a pattern for the children? Because that's part of what this video is about, is how do we deal with things? If we sin in front of our children and use swear words that we ought not use, then we need to deal with that with our children.
Right. But I'm saying there's a difference between the one of thing or this has become a pattern.
Right.
Because there are times that we will each go to each other where there is something that the other person, we don't do something for the sake of the other person because it's offensive. Let's say a word we don't use or an action we don't do, whatever. And we notice that it becomes more of a pattern. So then you would go to that person and say, I don't know if you know this was.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah, just that idea of he's my brother in Christ. And are we willing to confront each other? And are we willing to be confronted?
And that goes for marriage, first of all, because that's your primary relationship that you deal with every day. But also in the church, you know, are we easily offended in church? Are we bothered by things that we don't need to be bothered by? Do we just not go to church because we're offended at something? There may be times for that.
Yeah.
But it would have to be, I mean, but is there a time to say, I'm just not going to talk to you for 3 weeks? Like, as in a marriage, there's no time in which we should just not talk to each other for 3 weeks.
Except for a time in prayer and fasting. So if you're not going to eat for those 3 weeks.
If a church is leading you astray or teaching false doctrine and you don't want to submit your children under false doctrine, like, you need to confront that and maybe not go to that church anymore. There may be reasons for this. You know, and again, we're putting all these disclaimers on here. A general principle. Yeah. General principle. How do we talk to each other?
So also, like, how do your kids see you interacting with your spouse? I talked about this a little bit while you were gone.
Okay.
But like, do your kids see you as a loving couple? Like, we are okay. We kissed at the start of the video. We are okay with public displays of affection to a point, like to a point. But there are some couples that we go to church with them and you wouldn't know they were married. Not our church, but like we've gone to churches where people are.
And some of that is cultural. Some of it is cultural. People have been said, like, married couples, been married 60 years. No, they're not allowed to hold hands while they sit next to each other in church. We hold hands in church all the time.
We used to go to church with this couple that they're in their 60s. And they stand during church and he puts his hand in her pocket while we sing songs.
Okay,
it's so
you're
cute. I love it. If you know what I'm talking about, you know exactly.
They're always standing there with an arm, not like in some gross way, but like they are just close. They love one another. They respect one another. They honor one another, and they are a very good example of that to others.
So if you happen to watch this video and we're talking about you, we think it's very sweet.
Yes.
It's a very sweet thing. But do your kids see you as people who want to spend time together when you have an opportunity? I'm not saying every moment of every day needs to be spent together, but do you actually want to spend time with your spouse, or are you trying to avoid them? And are you making the effort? Is your relationship with your spouse worth it? Yeah. Because the Bible talks about a marriage being...
If you're married, it is worth it. I'm just going to say that. If you're Christians and you're married, it is worth it.
It is worth the hard. I talked about this in my homeschool video before. Homeschooling is hard, but it is worth it. It is so worth it. And a Christian marriage is supposed to be the picture of Christ and the church. And Christ being willing to lay down his life for the church. And the church...
Quitting is not an option.
And the church, like, submitting out of love for what has been done. And so while neither part is going to live up to this, neither wife nor husband is going to live up to this fully, we're supposed to be a picture of it to the world. And to just see so many Christian marriages where people just aren't willing to fight and better their marriage. Like, yes, it's a two-way, like, two people are involved in this marriage. But I don't know if you've ever seen the movie Fireproof. But I think it's great because one spouse is willing to fight for it and the other does not want to reconcile the marriage.
Even though he was, like in the movie, he was the one that was really the problem.
Yeah, he was the problem.
And then he has a change of heart and eventually becomes a Christian and tries to love his wife in very God-honoring ways and appropriate ways. And she's not having any of it, but she's already involved with some other guy.
And
so she's not willing to receive the love that he is now giving. That yes, he should have been giving it before, but that is no excuse to quit.
Oh.
And they said you never leave your partner, especially in a fire.
Yeah. And that's the other thing is also, what are you willing to see your spouse change? Because I think that's a big thing is we come to our spouse like, okay, I don't want to talk to my spouse about that because they're going to react this way. Well, if you want your spouse to think that you can possibly get better in this marriage, then you need to give them that same benefit of the doubt. That
was another major theme of the movie. You know, she didn't want to forgive him, and he had done sinful things, and he had repented of those things, and he had confessed them to her, and he had asked her to forgive him, and she wasn't willing to for quite some time. Now, you know, the movie turns out well in the end, because it's a movie, and they always turn out well in the end.
It's like a Hallmark movie, you know? Everything has to just be happy at the end. But it's a great movie.
It is a very good movie, especially in the sense that it is worth fighting for. Not just it's worth tolerating, but it's worth fighting for, investing in. Just like homeschooling, we want our child is struggling to learn to read, or struggling with math, or struggling with something. Do you just quit on them and say, well, this is too hard, they're just not going to get it? Or do you keep working at it, or you change your tactics? Do you approach it from a different angle? Do you take a break and then go back to it? You know, do you ask for help and counsel from somebody else?
You don't take a break and then go back to it.
Well, I mean, in the sense that, like, you walk away from an argument or a heated discussion for a period of time to cool off for the purpose of prayer and, in the end, getting it right.
I know too many marriages, though, that they'd be willing to be like, oh, look, they just gave us the out, that we could go take a break from it. We don't have to be enjoying each other.
Yeah, we're not making this up. We've had people say these exact words to us multiple times.
Yeah.
That I quit, I'm done, I won't try anymore, I'm not willing to be hurt again, those sorts of things. I'm not saying take abuse, that's not what I'm saying.
But of the marriage counseling we've done, very few of the counseling sessions are very cut and dry that this person was at fault.
No, like you said, there's usually both people are at fault in some way.
Right. I'm not saying in every case. There are definitely that man, like I'm just going to say, that man is abusive and his wife is doing the best she can to put up with it. She should not have to just put up with it. I'm not saying that. But very often there's the abusive husband yells at the wife. The wife then sins back against him. We've even seen people go as far as like, okay, well then I'm going to go out and sleep with your best friend type thing. Like, totally wrong to do. And it doesn't solve anything. It just then makes you part of the sin that's going on. I think that we need to be very willing to admit that our behaviors are also affecting the situation. We need to stop those behaviors. Asking God to do that through us, not us on our own.
Yeah. I'm sure we've missed some things. I'm sure we've been misunderstood on some things, because I am misunderstood every time my mouth opens, it seems, especially on these videos. So feel free to ask questions in the comments, don't feel free to make accusations, assertions, or say, you said this when I didn't say
But
it.
feel free to ask
Feel free
questions,
to ask us
and we
questions.
might even do a follow-up depending on what questions are asked. But we're going to go hang out with the kiddos.
Yeah.
Because we've now been doing this. But we will come back for one to talk about. So this was just a think about your interaction with your spouse and how that's informing your kids' views of marriage. And now we're going to do another one another day about how you interact with your kids and how that is going to play into their idea of parenting your grandchildren. So,
Ooh, parenting our grandchildren. Now we're talking about multi-generational faithfulness.
yeah. So anyway, we will see you guys next time on Herding Little Cows to the Glory of God.